Did you know there was a spy so brilliant and audacious that he convinced the world's elite he was one of them? Stop what you're doing, because this story will twist your brain into knots. Let's dive into the extraordinary life of Sidney Riley, commonly regarded as the inspiration behind Ian Fleming's James Bond. Born as Sigmund Rosenblum in the 1870s, some say in Ukraine, others in Ireland, Sidney Riley was as mysterious about his origins as he was about his true allegiances. By the late 19th century, he was dabbling in espionage for multiple countries: British, Russian, even German, a double or maybe triple agent. He wasn't just a master of disguise, he was also a suave social chameleon whose confidence and charisma made him almost impossible to refuse. One of his most audacious early missions involved scheming with the British to betray a group of Russian revolutionaries during their plot to overthrow the regime. Disguised as an Austrian arms dealer, Riley infiltrated and manipulated the group, neutralizing the uprising before it even gained momentum. But here's the plot twist. It was later revealed he might have been playing both sides all along. Did Riley prevent chaos or fuel it under a hidden agenda? History still debates. But let's talk about his most famous exploit, the 1918 Bolshevik conspiracy. Riley, with the British Secret Service MI6, plotted to overthrow Lenin's government in Soviet Russia. Yes, that Lenin. He disguised himself as a Bolshevik official, dining with Lenin, all the while devising a plan to bring down the regime. While his daring plan ultimately failed, his infiltration skills were unparalleled. Think about it. He tricked the founders of Soviet Russia. No movie villain ever came close to this. What makes Sidney Riley's life even more intriguing is how it ended. In the ultimate irony of a life shaped by deception and intrigue, the Soviets captured him in 1925 after luring him back to Russia. He was convicted of anti-Bolshevik activities and summarily executed, or so they claim. There are rumors he staged his death and vanished into obscurity, possibly living out his days under yet another alias. Chilling, right? His life reads like a spy novel, a blend of deception, betrayal, audacity, and intrigue. So next time you hear about super spies, remember Sidney Riley, the man who fooled the world and whose true story remains just as elusive as his aliases. What if modern spies are still using his tactics? Mind blown. Did you know that at one point Australia declared war against birds? Not just any birds. Emus. Yes, this is not fictional. This was a real event, and historians have hilariously dubbed it the Great Emu War. Let me break this wild story down for you. Let's rewind back to the early 1930s. Australian farmers in Western Australia were in crisis. Post-World War I soldiers turned farmers were working hard to grow wheat, and then disaster struck. Thousands upon thousands of emus, giant flightless birds native to Australia, began invading the farmland. These emus were hungry, and they were feasting on crops like an unstoppable army. To make matters worse, any attempt to drive them away failed. These birds were fast, hardy, and frustratingly coordinated. Now, the government had a brilliant, or should I say not so brilliant, idea. They decided to handle the emu problem with soldiers, machine guns, and ammo. Who needs a simple fence when you've got military equipment, right? Cue the start of what we now call the Great Emu War. The first battle began in November 1932. Soldiers armed with machine guns moved out, eager to face their feathered foes. But guess what? The emus were smarter than anyone had anticipated. These birds didn't march into open fire like sitting ducks. Oh no. They split into smaller groups and ran in zigzag formations, making it nearly impossible for soldiers to aim. Imagine a bird dodging bullets. That's how skilled they were. Even when caught in crossfire, the emus shrugged off injuries like true warriors and continued running. The soldiers' machine guns jammed. Their vehicles broke down. Meanwhile, the emus continued munching crops and outsmarting humans. After several humiliating attempts to win the war, the Australian troops had to retreat. They were forced to admit defeat. That's right. The emus won. To this day, this bizarre conflict is remembered as perhaps the strangest war in history. The government eventually offered the farmers compensation for their losses, but nothing could erase the embarrassment of being defeated by a bunch of birds. So next time you see an emu, give it some respect. After all, it's part of the only species to ever win a war against humans. What do you think? Is this the most absurd piece of history you've ever heard? Let me know in the comments. Did you know that a single beard almost started a war? Let me take you back to 1701 and the court of the Prussian king Frederick I. At this time, European monarchs shared a diversity of cultures, traditions, and, yes, styles of facial hair. Now, what you're about to hear sounds too bizarre to be true, but this historical moment set events in motion that could have drastically changed Europe. Enter Peter the Great, the Tsar of Russia, a towering figure known for his love of modernization, reform, and his hatred of one thing: beards. Peter thought they symbolized old-fashioned thinking and an attachment to outdated traditions. In his drive to westernize Russia, he imposed a beard tax. If you wanted to keep your facial hair, you paid a hefty fee. Many Russians begrudgingly complied. Meanwhile, in Prussia, King Frederick I had no issue with beards. In fact, he encouraged lavish traditions, flowing fabrics, and even celebrated long, styled facial hair among his nobility. So you can imagine the tension when these two monarchs met. During an elaborate state visit to Prussia, Peter maintained a strict no-beard policy for his entourage as a symbol of modernity. But Frederick, unimpressed with Peter's bold ideas, did something to escalate an already heated situation. During a royal banquet, Frederick jokingly proposed a toast titled, "To the Glory of Beards." Historians believe this jab involved parading a bearded courtier before Peter. Can you imagine? Rumor has it, Peter's reaction was anything but jovial. Accounts suggest his mood soured immediately. He found the prank disrespectful and symbolic of Europe's resistance to the change he so desperately sought to implement in Russia. Now, things didn't end with just offended egos. Whispers of the incident traveled across European courts, fueling speculations that an insult like this wouldn't be easily forgotten. For months, gossip hinted that diplomatic ties were in jeopardy. Some whispered about war being a possibility, though confrontation avoided reaching such extremes. Despite Frederick's jest, Peter's reforms persisted in reshaping Russian society. This hairy story remains a reminder of how delicate diplomacy can be, and how something as trivial as a beard could ripple across history and almost change its course. So, the next time you groom your facial hair or see a beard, remember, it might just be more political than you think. Let us know what you think about this tale in the comments below.